everything that was said during the announcements. September is a full month around here. If we had one more thing, we'd have to expand it to 31 days. So check everything that's going on. Next week, we move the nursery from downstairs to upstairs. The 8th, we have a CE shower, and adult Bible study starts. Then on the 15th, we start Sunday school for ages preschool through grade 8. And then on the 15th, we have a church-wide celebration where we'll play games and have food and all sorts of things. And then small group will begin on the 25th. So it is a full month. And most of these things were not happening in years prior. So these are big steps of faith all coming our way. And it's appropriate that that is our focus in our messages. And the little slip you have, we've been talking about this for a number of weeks. If it's your first time here in a little while, we're looking at over the next 9 months, September for May, what step of faith can you take that shows that you believe in God and that you're willing to seek Him, believing He will reward you on your quest. So I'd invite you, whether you put your name on or not is not a big thing, but I'd invite you to fill that out, hand it to me after church. You could come and put it up here at the front, or find a way to get it to somebody that will get it to me. And if you don't fill it out today, my information's on the bulletin. You can text me. My phone number should be in there somewhere. You can email me, and I can get it that way as well. And then next week, and I have several of these already, we'll start to see some of those things that people are saying. This is how I am going to take a step of faith in these next 9 months. And it will be very, very amazing to see what God does over these next 9 months in our lives individually and in the church's life as well. So we know it was back to school week, and that was a big thing for our community, big thing for those teachers among us and parents of young children and high school age children. And you know it's back to school week. You have the smell of crayons and glue in the air, and it's just, it's a really good thing. One school, I hear, I'm not sure it wasn't ours, but one school in the community got Lulabelle's caramel rolls, I think, maybe, and they were happy with that. So that was a great thing that our church did to help one school get started on the right foot, or at least with a full stomach. So Sven came home from school one day on the first day of school, and he said, Mama, I have the biggest feet in the 3rd grade. Is that because I'm Norwegian? And she said, no, son, it's because you're 19 years old. If you have a Bible this morning, some of you teachers have had that student. Some of you were that student. If you have a Bible this morning, we are in Hebrews in the 12th chapter, 18th verse. And we're going to read verse 18 through 29. And as you hear this, you want to listen for the tale of 2 journeys. Verse 18, you have not come to a mountain that can be touched, and that is burning with fire, to darkness, gloom, and storm, to a trumpet blast, or to such a voice speaking words that those who heard it begged that no further word be spoken to them, because they could not bear what was commanded. If even an animal touches the mountain, it must be stoned. The sight was so terrifying that Moses said, I am trembling with fear. But you have come to Mount Zion, to the heavenly Jerusalem, the city of the living God. You have come to thousands upon thousands of angels in joyful assembly, to the church of the firstborn whose names are written in heaven. You have come to God, the judge of all men, to the spirits of righteous men made perfect. You've come to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. So see to it that you do not refuse him who speaks. If they did not escape when they refused him who warned them on earth, how much less will we if we turn away from him who warns us from heaven. At that time, God's voice shook the earth. But now he has promised, once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens. The words once more indicate the removing of what can be shaken, created things, so that what cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful and so worship God acceptably with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. Powerful words tucked away in the latter parts of Hebrews. And this start of school, at least for me being in education, is a good time to read this passage, the tale of two journeys, where it's never really the same trip twice. Because each year the start of school is like the start of a journey, and the author of Hebrews paints a pretty good picture of two different trip options. As a teacher, you can think, well, last year was a pretty good year, and I did pretty well. I knew what I was doing. So I think I'm just going to repeat what I did last year and do it exactly the same. And then we start to do that again and again and again, and pretty soon 1988, which is when I began teaching, is now 2019, and we're still using a slide rule and an overhead projector, and it's just we haven't moved on to a new journey. If you went to school with those things, then Desmos and Smartboard and Google Classroom probably mean nothing to you. But it's not the same trip today as it was in 1988. How many of you took a summer vacation this year? Show of hands. How many of you are still going to take one? You're just waiting for all those school kids to get out of the way. Yeah, there you go. All right, so the way you traveled this year, the way you're going to travel, is it the same way that you maybe traveled back when you were a kid? Any differences that you notice these days? I would think there would be some. The vehicles, for one. I mean, who had climate control back in 1980? I even hear now there's cars that have these lane change things, so if you inadvertently change lanes, it'll correct you. Or even I've heard, I don't know if it's true, but you can get a vehicle where it massages your back and your rear end while you're driving. It's a pretty good option, I think. I mean, think of that as a kid. Those of you that are at least as far as I am in age, you never would have dreamed of such a thing. So it's a different trip these days, even if you're on the same road. How many of you this year, on your trip you took or that you're going to take, how many of you take along a hardcover or softcover atlas or road map from the different states you go to? Some people still do that. All right, so we have some diehards. I can remember the days when maps and atlas were the key to road trips. The night before your vacation, your dad lays out the map on the kitchen table, and he's showing you, son, now this is the route we're going to take, and you're going to be having this map in the back seat, so you got to help me navigate. After this many miles, we take this turn. Anybody get to do that as a kid? It was a big deal to be trusted with the map. And everything went fine until all of a sudden there was road construction, and you didn't have Siri to tell you it was coming, so now all of a sudden you're in the back seat looking, well, which way are we going to go now? And Dad's saying, where do I turn? Where do I turn? And you're not quite as fast as you thought you were. It was on one of those road trips that we got really hungry, and we were kind of in the middle of nowhere, so we pulled off, and there was just this lone gas station with an old-timer out front. We said, you know where we can get something to eat? And he said, well, if you just take this road and go this many miles, take a turn, about 5 miles total, you come to a bacon tree. We thought, bacon tree? We don't know that name of a chain, but it's worth a shot. It sounded good, so did exactly as he said, but when we went the way he told us, we came to a dead end. Nothing there. And worse, we were suddenly surrounded by a group of Hell's Angels bikers. And they circled the car, and they took my dad's wallet and his cash and his traveler's checks, and that was it. So we drove back to the gas station. We found the old-timer, and we said, hey, there was no bacon tree, just a bunch of bikers who robbed us. He scratched his head and pulled out his tattered map and looked at it, and he said, "Oh, it wasn't a bacon tree, it was a ham bush." I know. Sometimes the destination's not worth the journey, but you know. Faith journey in Hebrews 12 has many similarities to the way we travel, or the way we teach, or the way we live, the way we look at life. If you read the Old Testament at all, and you read Exodus, you can read the story of coming out of Egypt and the miracles and crossing the Red Sea and the fire on the mountain and all of these things, and it's exciting. The Ten Commandments, it's one of the best parts of Scripture to read because it's nonstop action and it's very, very exciting. And that same story, that journey, that trip got taught and passed down from generation to generation to your children's children, and they thought it was just the best thing. The mountain looming in the distance, celebrating freedom and faith. Hearing the confident voice of Moses, the leader whom God talked to face, who said there's no other servant ever like Moses. Feasting at the mountain base. Relaxing, swimming in the springs. All these things you would have looked at this trip on this faith journey. And if there was a travel video, it would have shown how great the trip to Mount Sinai was. So it's shocking to hear the way it's talked about in Hebrews 12. It's not the same journey that is pictured. In Hebrews 12, the mountain's on fire. If you see images of the California fires, or you've lived in places with forest fires, you know. And it says it's dark, and it's gloomy, and it's stormy, kind of like it was here Friday night, where it gets really, really dark, and you're not sure what's going to happen. And the trumpet that blasts is not a welcoming come to worship kind of thing. It's a scary sound. It's like a siren. It's a shrill sound and it frightens you. And you hear the voice that booms from the mountain. It's not an inviting voice. It's a scary voice. You can't even bear to hear what it's saying. The mountain is no longer a welcome sight, a vacation destination. It's no longer a place you want to go. In fact, you want to turn around. It was become a place of terror. It's a place of fear. It's a place of death even for the birds and the animals if they dare go there. In fact, it's so scary. We should take note of this in verse 21. It's so scary that even Moses says, "I am trembling with fear." We get comfortable. We get used to our journey in life, our faith journey. It's why we teach what we taught last year. It's why we do the same things, because it becomes a routine, and we like it. And we live today like we lived yesterday and the day before and the year before that, because it's something we know. We can see it, we can touch it, we can feel it. It's tangible. And it's not that what was there was bad. It's not. God had led the people to the mountain. God has led us to where we are in life today. You've arrived where you are today on August 25th by God leading you to this place. But God says today, I have a new faith journey in mind for you. A brand new adventure. And he says, let go of what you can touch. Let go of that familiar vacation and the trip that you knew and the route that you knew and the maps that you followed, because I have something new. Believe that I exist. Believe that I'm in the new place where I'm leading you, and I'll reward you as you seek me. Our CE group very much feels this sense of new. We looked at the layout of the basement this week. And it was pretty exciting to be down there and to be talking and to hear the ideas, to hear about the things people thought we need to ask for in this CE shower that we're going to have. But to picture how the space down there might be used and to think of the young lives coming down into that basement and the faith journey thereon that we can be a part of. It was really, really exciting. Part of that time and that talk during that, Robin said, do you think we should put portable CD players on the list? Because that's something that's been quite useful. Steph gently said, I don't think most teachers use those these days. I think they have the music on their phone. And it was just this subtle shift that, you probably can't even find CDs a lot of the time anymore today. It's a new journey. It's a new day. It's a new time in your life. And God is looking to lead you forward in faith. And He's asking if you're willing to take the step that He leads. You're being commissioned on a new venture. God's saying you might experience part of me that you've never ever experienced before. Or a part you've experienced, but in a new way. I have to say that song that you guys led this morning, that is an amazing song. I've not sung that ever before until today. What a song of faith. Thanks for leading that. What a picture that gives us of life in faith. God says, come and seek me. We may not be in the CD era of Sunday school, but we're on a faith journey together. And we're being commissioned to it. Listen to the description that starts in verse 22 and compare it to the earlier verses in how they were spoken of. You have come, and picture this for yourself. Picture your own journey leading to this. You have come to the heavenly Jerusalem. You've come to the city of the living God, where there are thousands upon thousands of angels celebrating. That's where we're going. That's where you're headed, God says. And they're there in joyful assembly. You're attending the church of the firstborn whose names are written down in heaven. Imagine that guest book. You've come to God and spirits of righteous seekers whom God has made perfect. Now picture that scene, and the angels are celebrating and there's music. And then it comes time for somebody to speak, and out comes Jesus Himself. And He's going to be your teacher for the day. Wow. Teaching about His body and His blood that He shed for you. So you don't need somebody standing up front showing the bread and showing the cup anymore, because the bread and cup are right there. I mean, I absolutely love First Baptist and gathering here. But if that church opened next door, I'd be there. That's where I would want to be. I mean, wouldn't you? Isn't that where you'd like to worship? That's the image we get of where we're headed. And it should really grab us by the heart that God is saying, this is what you should be looking forward to. And what you do right now on your journey should show that you're longing for this, so that everybody who comes across you gets a glimpse of it through your life. If that gathering lay at the end of these 9 months, what would you write on that little piece of paper? What would be your faith goal so that by the time you got to the end of May, you'd be pumped for something like that? Think of it that way. So what's one thing to focus on? Who's one person that you would love to see their name written in that book that's talked about here? And how are you going to take a step of faith that will move toward that? How will you live toward that? Now, it all sounds fine and good, but we all know how difficult it can be to set out towards something new, right? It's why we call it faith, because it's towards something we've not seen before. Something we haven't experienced before. And I'm finding this out as I just turned 53 this past week. Gets less and less easy to set out towards something new as you advance in age. You tend to like what you know, what's familiar. But God calls us to something new in faith. Something we maybe haven't seen or experienced, or maybe it's an expansion of what you've done before. Maybe it's living in a new location. Talking to some of you this morning, there's stories of people who are relocating, starting new jobs, starting new families, and it's all happening at once. Or maybe it's just one area of expansion in your life. Or maybe it's something that's suddenly difficult in life. New challenge you wouldn't have seen coming and you never would have asked for. Sometimes, and some of you are at this place, we're not able to set out in life with the people that we've set out with before. They're no longer with us. It's not an option. Or sometimes we're called to take a new step of faith and leave people behind because somehow they don't fit into that journey. And that's difficult too. That's a pain and a newness that we don't like. Because we feel vulnerable and we feel sad. And we want to go back. This time of year, peaches get really good. You know, they bring them up out from Colorado or wherever we get them. But man, are they good. And one of the things that I've done with peaches ever since I was 8 years old, a bowl of Cheerios, slices of peach in the Cheerios. It's just like they go together really, really well. But every time I do that for the first time in the summer, which is usually in August, about this time, first bite takes me right back to when I was a kid. And it makes you, for just a second, think, oh, I wish I could go there. Some of you have that feeling right now. You wish you could go back to the faith journey you had, but that's not what we're called to. As good as the Exodus trip was, that's not where God is leading them in this day in Hebrews. And as good as things may have been with who you lived with in the past and the journey you had in the past, that's not an option today. It's not where you're called. You're called to live forward to that place where there's thousands and thousands of angels who you're going to celebrate with someday. And that can be very difficult. Verse 25 says, "See to it that you do not refuse him who speaks." So if God's speaking to you today and saying something to you today, I would not want to ignore what he's telling you. I would not want to put it off and say, "No, God, I'm not willing." It gives a good image at the end, that feeling of things shaking, of life being really unsettled. And you know what it is when you pick something out of a garden and you shake it sometimes by the roots to get all the dirt off. That's the same kind of feeling that's being described here. Being pushed out of our comfort zone, of having the map ripped away, that map that you were so accustomed to. And though it might be painful or scary when that happens, we know the one who's doing the shaking. And God never intends to harm us. He only intends to have removed from our lives whatever is blocking our faith. In my roadmap days, I would never have pictured GPS and how it would change travel. In our faith days, right now, we have no idea what might develop if we take one step. We have no idea what God might do. In 2 weeks, when people bring those shower gifts for CE, we'll see all kinds of tangible steps of faith, things that can be used to help instruct and help make things more pleasing and help students understand better. And that's a cool thing. You can see those in your life too. You can see a tangible step that you take, even if you don't know how it's going to result. You can see that step. That's what God's calling us to. I think of some of the young lives we have. I think, where will God lead Matson Smith through this process? Where will Isley Clark be in 10, 15 years? And we get to be a part of that journey. Where will us as adults be who gather in this room over here on Sunday after Sunday starting in September? Where will we be even 9 months from now? Who knows what God will be doing in our lives? Who knows what First Baptist will be doing as we move closer and closer to that gathering of thousands and thousands of angels and we join in? Bow your heads this morning. And just let God have time in your life. The fall tends to kick all sorts of things in gear. And we can get going easily 500 miles a minute and 15 different directions. God's just asking for a few moments right now to direct your heart on a new faith journey. And He sees where it's really difficult for you. He sees if you don't even know what step to take next. Ask and listen. Wait for Him. He'll show you. If you feel like you're being shaken by the roots, it's not to destroy you. It's to get rid of the things that distract. God, would you look at us this morning, individually and as a church body? God, our desire as we move into this season is to take steps of faith. And God, we truly believe that as we do that as individuals and as we do that collectively, we say we believe in you and we seek you, you will reward in ways that brings more and more people into that guest book that's waiting with the thousands and thousands, where your Son will speak to us. God, lead us to that day. Help us take those steps. In Christ's name, amen.